Good morning. This is Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You get more information about past shows, future shows, and my website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my guest now. And she is Kimberly Haley-Coleman, founder and executive director of Global Aware, being my guest. And Kimberly, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, and
Hi.
that is Kimberly. Kimberly Haley-Coleman is the founder and executive director of Global Aware, the United States and Canadian-based nonprofit organization that leads and mobilizes volunteers for short-term service projects in over 25 countries. With a background in international business development and finance, she previously held leadership roles at global firms, including the NBC, Space Services International, and Invest Tools. She holds an MBA in international business, an MA in art history, and a BA from Emory University. And so the question, Kimberly, I always ask the first time I speak with somebody is, as a kid, you grew up where?
Well, I was born in Pensacola and then was in Southern California for about 7 years because my dad was in the military before coming back to Texas, where my family for generations had been.
Okay.
So, Texas from the age of 8 or so.
Okay. As a kid growing up in Texas from the age of 8 or so, did you always know you wanted to head your own nonprofit?
Oh, absolutely not. I had a totally different career. No, I had a very, very circuitous career route. Yeah, I really got here accidentally for sure.
We'll talk a little bit about that career path you followed.
Sure,
So you went
sure.
you went to college as a business major.
Yes, yes. Much to my parents' chagrin, I was exclusively in the humanities, double majoring in French and art history and minoring in marketing and Italian, things where they didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was in the art world for a while, galleries and museums. And then and I was getting my master's in art history at the time. I was always interested in other cultures, always, 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 and had traveled a fair amount. As well. And so when I pivoted to the financial world and international business, and I would find myself in other countries, having already seen the sites and not knowing what to do with my time and seeing if there was a way to serve. And I proactively went out trying to find, hey, would Habitat for Humanity let me work in, Brazil for a couple of days over the weekend? Or would they let me help build a house for 3 or 4 days while I was in Thailand or whatever? And they just aren't set up for that. Understandably, obviously going down that path myself when I started doing my own projects and bringing people with me. And that's really how it came about. And by the year 2003, I'd quit all other work and did only this. And it was really the impact of serving alongside local communities, even though it's super short term, that really lit that fire for me in terms of feeling connected to humanity again. And I should start out first and foremost that I really feel like service in your own community is so important. That's where it needs to start, with your neighbors and with your home community. And for those who have the ability, the time, and the resources to go beyond that, we think all of it's important. So even though we are focused on countries that I'm really heavy in Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, Eastern Europe, and that is partially because we really have two missions. One is to really promote cultural awareness of different cultures that are very different from someone from North America, so that they'll learn a little bit about their thinking process, their food, their spiritual practice, their clothing, in a really fun and positive way, in a meaningful way. And then we're also trying to stand side by side as equals, help somebody stand on their own 2 feet. And you can obviously do these kinds of things anywhere. It's just harder to do international than your own community. Most people are aware of all sorts of projects going on in their community. They'll see the yard signs. I will also point out that we will get criticized for working outside of the United States when people ask, well, why do this when there's still so many needs in the US? And it's a valid question because there obviously are. But someone can really be living what's considered a really good life in many of the countries where we work and have no access to running water or electricity. And here in the United States, you can find someone who's below the poverty line who has running water. So it doesn't mean that there aren't needs here, but we are trying to work in places where the need is very real and very deep, but where we can be partners to our local communities, where they're picking the project, they're picking how we do it, they're being led by the locals. So anyway, that's a little bit about my
Well, let me
background.
ask you this then, in terms of getting involved. As a kid, did your folks encourage you to get involved in the community or be a volunteer?
So I feel like I had very typical touch points to service that a lot of kids did. I did the Campfire Girls, which is similar to Girl Scouts. My own girls did that their whole careers, and they're in college now. And we did, all the kinds of community walks and uh, church service groups. There were required school service hours. They were fairly traditional kinds of service that we did. And we might do some personal one-off things, but in terms of taking on a project where we're building and leaving something concrete like a wheelchair ramp for someone, or assembling wheelchairs for landmine victims, or installing concrete floors of the homes of single moms in Guatemala, those kinds of things I really wasn't doing. Uh, and it was one of those things where I think I always had this romantic idea of doing the Peace Corps, but by the time I was pulled together enough to go, okay, now I'm ready. Oh gosh, it's a 2.5 year commitment. It's hard to do that once you have a mortgage and a family and all of that. So it really came out of that. While there are so many good churches doing great work, many of them are going to one place over and over every year and aren't necessarily there all year so that you could go when you have the time. And that was a bit of a challenge that's out there, which was a need that we felt we were meeting,
Now talk
is
about
being able
this.
to meet people when they had availability and time, really enabling busy people to make some meaningful, positive impact whenever they want.
So talk about this need then that you identified, and that all of a sudden you decide to then put this together and form, which is kind of cool, your own organization. It's almost like reminds me of like a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland thing. Let's do a show. So instead of doing a show, you have the idea, let's go and help other people, which I kind of love. What gave you the idea though to actually start an organization to do this?
So, the organ so it was less that I was thinking about a company or an organization, and more really short term, because I was already in countries for my past work life, my corporate life, when I was, in places like Space Services International, and the customers for what we were doing there were primarily in Brazil, Japan, Germany, not the US. So anyway, you'd find yourself in another country over the weekend and wondering, what do I do with that time? And if I hadn't seen the sights in those countries, then that's what I would have been doing. But if I only had a few days, I just started thinking, well, maybe I could just volunteer while I'm here. And I don't know why that occurred to me. Again, in the back of my mind, I'd always thought the Peace Corps would be wonderful to do too. So maybe it was a melding of those two things. How to connect to a community if it's not just from a more consumer standpoint, which is, the more traditional tourist path where you're going to churches and museums and buying their food, all of which is also something that is great to do, but doesn't necessarily give you a really deep window into the people who live someplace and understand how similar we all are, that we have the same hopes and fears for our children, and the same things we want to achieve in terms of health and happiness. And somehow seeing that with other people, um, the first time I did it, I just remember feeling inspired, like how I'm not the only one who wants to do this, to get outside of a cubicle, dog eat dog world for a little bit, uh, kind of reconnects you, makes you feel you're not just seeing the world, you're serving it, um, really helping uh, stand side by side with someone to have a better life and a better future, with a willingness to serve.
Now,
leaving more than a footprint.
when we were doing this, in terms of setting this up, do you have a background or prior to this in different foreign languages, or were you good with foreign languages?
I do, but not in the right places. I took French for 14 years. I can't say that I've used it a lot in my work, and I've had to, if you don't speak Spanish and you heard me speaking it, you might think I'm fluent. But if you're fluent, you know that I've just learned it on the fly, right? I don't speak it as well as I wish I did. And I have some Italian and things like that. But, I fortunately, we rely so heavily on all of our coordinators. So shout out to Rocio and Federico and Kevin and Pius and all of our coordinators that make our program what it is. I mean, they are the ones who live and work and lead these projects and programs that make every week so magical. They're the ones who are always there in the community, making sure that we're doing things that are needed in a safe and interesting way and making sure our volunteers are happy. So really, I think we've got to give kudos to the local coordinators we have that are making everything really hum the way they're supposed to.
Now, talk about the program then. So, if people are watching this, um, you're setting up volunteer opportunities throughout the world. Who are the people who go to these countries? Are they Americans or are they
Yeah.
home countries?
Yeah, they're largely North American.
Gotcha.
And they're largely people who, the typical decision maker that calls us that might be a family household, head of household that's making the decision on behalf of the family. They may be bringing several multi-generations with them, their kids, their parents, their siblings, a girls' trip, a church trip, a school trip. We also have a lot of corporations. There are many corporate social responsibility programs out there now that allow, like for Salesforce, Microsoft, Vivint, Legacy, Fusion, all these companies that will allow you to get contribution matching. So our programs are like $1,400 for the week. And so if a volunteer pays for 500 or 600 of it, a company will often pay the other half to allow their employees to give back when and where and how they want to in a really meaningful way. Also makes them super grateful for their standard of living when they come home and they feel really connected and grateful to their company. And there are a lot of companies, Blaine, that do this is new for me in the last 20 years, the volunteer paid time off. I might get a day off to go and serve a local community, but never a few days. And because they're short term, if somebody is able to go over, Thanksgiving or 4th of July, they're not having to take a ton of time off to participate in this. And so the typical person who's calling us, it may be somebody with a CSR department, a corporate responsibility department, or an employee benefits department in a corporation, or it could be a family. So it really depends. And then I also have to say, we have a whole lot of solo travelers. If you were to go to our website, you'd see all our programs listed throughout the year, but they're listed like every other week. The weeks you don't see listed are when, people will do their family reunions and church groups and corporate groups. So if people are just signing up as solo travelers, they're signing up for the weeks that are listed and they'll meet other people on that project. And usually those are 10 or 12 people. They're pretty small, they're pretty tight. When we have big groups, we've had up to 250, then we actually treat that like 20 groups of 10. When we're on site, we're putting our coordinator and our foreman with a group of about 10 people in a work project so that we're not overwhelming the community. We're really getting to see and know in a smaller scale sense that human connection that in a world of AI and digital communication can feel far away. And this is just the opposite. It's really high touch, high human connection, and really impactful on your heart. I mean, 100% of everybody who serves comes away saying they felt they got more than they gave because the communities are so open and warm in this kind of a setting. There's nothing competitive happening. So it's a special way of getting to see the world. And obviously, the kinds of people who do this, it's an interesting way to meet other people because you're meeting people who enjoy serving and enjoy providing joy to others. So it's really lovely way to interact with people from North America as well.
Listening to you reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by a woman by the name of Shirley Chisholm. And she was the first African American woman to ever run for president of the United States. She was also the first African American woman in New York to become a congresswoman. And she had a great quote, which I use all the time, and it reminds me of what you're talking about. She would say, "Service is the rent we pay for living on earth," you know, and we're here to help other people if we can. You mentioned that most of these then are short-term stays. Or what's the longest
Yes.
they involve?
So, our standard, what people sign up for are 6 nights, 7 days. They
Okay.
arrive generally on a Sunday and they're done on Saturday to give some travel time because, we're
Right.
going to Southeast Asia, India, all over. It can take a couple days to get there, it can take a couple days to get home. So for people who have limited time off. This is intended to hopefully fit conveniently in a typical busy person's lifestyle. But when we have special corporate school and church groups, if they want to do a project for 3 or 4 days, we will often try and tailor it to specifically not only the time length they have, but the mission they have. So, for example, if we have a company that really wants to specifically benefit children with special needs, then we will try and find a project where we're working on building a sensory garden, for example, for kids with special needs. So, to show you, it's just a big variety of what we do. You can't, so talking to you right now, I can't tell you if you were to go you're not just going to be doing one thing. It really depends on where and when you go and how big your group is. There are some in Kenya, we're always going to be building the typical wattle and daub style homes. And in Guatemala, we're always installing concrete floors. So there may be some similarities. How many we do is a function of how many people we have. And if we have side projects, when we know there are children coming, then we will put in, hand painting projects and little gardens and playtime with the local family we're there to serve so that they're getting to rotate through their activities to have various touch points.
What's the longest a project runs? They're all under
The
a week?
longest, well, we've had people do it several weeks in a row, but the longest standard one is in the Galapagos. And that is more a function that the national park system there requires the 2 weeks in terms of the required training they have. But that is an outlier. That is not our normal project. It's just, again, a requirement for the Park Service with whom we work. And that is a key component that I mentioned our coordinators who are the ones making sure that we're sustaining all the small scale enterprise by employing our local cooks and our drivers and our local foremen. But we are also uh, lost my train. Oh, yes, our local communities are our partners. So, for example, in Guatemala, we're working with a women's grassroots cooperative that are supporting one another, both for their community gardens and the dental clinic there and the school library project we've done. But so our coordinators making sure that everything is organized, that we have the materials ready, that they've put the week together, but they're working with local uh, grassroots organizations to make sure that we're doing work that's needed because we're not there to tell any community what they need or how to do it. We're not choosing it.
Age-wise, who is this for?
Who is this for?
Yeah.
We have had 2-year-olds and we've had 90-year-olds. It's for people who are ready to go beyond our borders in a way they haven't done before. Somebody who's looking for adventure and service in a new way, but maybe doesn't have a whole lot of time to give. And so the age range is a really big spread. It's a unique kind of travel because there are people who they may be in a significant relationship, but they'll travel solo for this, or a girls' trip, or a father-son trip. There's lots of different travel companion um, formulas that we see on with travel like this. So it's a little bit non-traditional. It's not, honeymoon travel. Although we've had a lot of people meet and get married on our trips
I was going
too.
to ask you, really?
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Retired folks, do you have retired folks volunteering this?
I'm sorry, say
I'm
that again.
sorry, do you have retired folks?
Absolutely. Yes, we do. And, we have, in fact, I know this summer we have a podcast, and our intern Santiago is the one who found you, Blaine. And anyway, I know he did an interview with retired a woman named Nancy, who's, I don't know, been on maybe 9 of our programs and brought her granddaughter on each one. And he did a long interview with her about those projects and programs and what they meant to her and how she experienced them.
And so you mentioned something interesting. You mentioned, so you also do a podcast. How do people find out about that?
So it really began when we were looking for a way to give information. If somebody had already registered for our program, let's say they were registered for our Cuba program, for example, there's a lot of material to get through in terms of this is how you get your tourist card, and this is what you need to know what you can bring in and what you can't, and how to pack, and what should you do about bringing money and all of that. So, of course, we have a packet of materials. But we found over time that a lot of people would just show up without having read it, which is okay. We're designed for plug and play where people can show up. Uh, but we started thinking about 4 years ago, well, I wonder if we put all this in a podcast. Hey, I'm trying to plan for my trip to Thailand. I'm going to do a 1 hour podcast taking you through the salient parts of our orientation so that while you're driving or cleaning or working out or walking, you could be listening and absorbing that information that way. And so it really started out for us using our podcast, had started out as program specific and informational. But then we found that people were just as interested in hearing people come back and explain what their experience was like, talking to our coordinators, understanding what kind of risks there are or aren't, general travel tips, things like that. So we've expanded far beyond just our traditional. And we actually, our YouTube is the same way. We have all sorts of little YouTube clips saying, hey, if you're trying to go to X, Y, and Z country and you want to know if you're going to Zimbabwe, should you get the Kazaa visa or the one entry visa? Well, we'll give you videos kind of explaining our thoughts on that. So even if you're not going on our programs, that there's something that we're hoping we can serve you in terms of something meaningful for
So how
travel.
do people find these podcasts?
So everything is under Globalware. If our Facebook page is Globalware, our Instagram is at Globalware, our YouTube is Globalware, our podcast is Globalware. So we're all under that same heading. And we also really try, and Sika, our amazing, gosh, she's been doing this for years and years, our social media gal, she gets all sorts of video clips and photos of people in the field volunteering right now, so that if somebody has started a project and they didn't get that last finishing piece done, watching social media, you'll see that next group of volunteers come and finish it. So it's been a really great place for letting volunteers stay in the loop with what's happening from wherever they've just come from. Really, I like to say that there, are souvenirs that our volunteers are coming home with are really, they're remembering all the smiles of the family where they're helping, and the garden they helped plant, and the concrete ramp they put in. Even though we do have leisure activities, I'd say 3 to 5 throughout the week, where we will have planned but optional cultural activities. So you go to Peru, you're going to see Machu Picchu. We know nobody wants to go that far and not see Machu Picchu, right? And you're going to see Pisac Market and the local main town tour and things like that. But the focus is service. And I think anybody coming home, they're going to have all those, great photos and memories of the sites, but the deepest memories are certainly those memories of connecting with the local communities. That's really, it's really the people on both sides of the hammer, if you will, that are what is leaving a huge impression for people.
Do any folks
adding value to the places instead of extracting value.
do any folks repeat the process?
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. In fact, some of the podcasts that were done this summer were on repeat volunteers. Don Germais, who used to be a weatherman in Florida, and I don't know how many programs he's been on of ours. I really don't, but I know that he's gone to our Thailand Hill Tribe program. I'm going to guess 5 or 6 times. So yeah, we get a lot of repeat volunteers. The more common thing is for people to go to a different country each time. And that's part of what led us to having so many program locations is this desire for people to keep adding to their cultural repertoire of who they're getting to know and understand. For us, it's really not about planting flags on a map. It's, how many cultures and hearts can we get to connect with.
Ballpark. Would you have any idea of how many folks have gone through the program all these years?
We have about 3,000 this year.
Wow.
I should have an easy answer for you, and I don't. I don't. But I have to tell you, it got real interrupted during COVID.
Oh.
In 2020, we used to have a program in China, and we never reopened it for all sorts of reasons. But pretty quickly in 2020, our programs came to a halt. So we had a good year there where almost nothing was done. And I started a totally different business in the meantime. But then as soon as we could, we started sending people back. And there were some countries that was easier to operate in at that time. And so we were able to continue we did have some virtual programming, but nothing replaces the in-person experience of kindness as a renewable resource.
And the other business, which I'm going to have to ask you about, was I read somewhere you had something that was called a tickle bar. And
Yeah.
is that what you started when COVID knocked you
Yes,
out?
yes. I was
Yeah.
looking for a way to create jobs and joy. And I'm a girly girl. I like to do my nails and all that stuff. And we were in a time where we couldn't do any of that. And I remember thinking, I do yoga every morning and walk and weights. And I would just thinking, gosh, if I could do anything, what would I do? Like if I could get my nails done or have someone blow dry my hair. And I was like, gosh, if I really could, I mean, I'd have somebody tickle my back. I wish somebody had a business like that. And I was, you know what? I'm going to do that. If I'm going to do it anytime something crazy like that, it's now. And so I did it, and it's still going. I really just thought it would be a pop-up business, but there are other people who like to get their hair played with and their back tickled, and so that's how that came about. It was also about trying to spread joy.
So I don't get, so what exactly is the tickle
So
bar?
you go and you get you so when I was a little girl and I would go and do sleepovers, we would paint nails and stuff like that. We'd also braid each other's hair. And it wasn't that we cared how it looked, it was a nice sensation. And it's just like if you get your hair washed, just the feeling of somebody washing your scalp for you is a luxury in a way, that feeling. And we would do things like try and draw on each other's backs and guess what you were drawing. Not because the game was all that amazing. It was that sensation. It's just kind of like it puts you in a zombie-like trance, like scratching a kid's back gently as they're going to sleep. It's just a different kind of, instead of a really deep massage, it's more surface. And so it's called hair play and back. It's like back scratching, but it tends to be, although everybody has a different preference for it. And it's interesting. I really thought it would be only women that would come in. We have these little Moroccan tents, and we give a little pink champagne and a little pink iced cookie, and we'll have some bachelorette parties that come in and things like that. But I've been surprised at we've had a lot of kids that are on the spectrum with sensory issues that have come. All sorts of demographics that I didn't have in my head when I started it that
It
come in.
reminds me of something I was involved in for a little bit called laughter yoga. Are you familiar with that?
No, but
Laughter
I've
yoga?
got to hear more.
Yeah, I'm making a note to send you more information about it. The
Laughter
premise is
yoga.
laughter yoga, and I could see sending people over for training in this too. But the whole idea that and a couple of my students have gotten involved in it as well, you just laugh because laughter is good for you. It makes you
Yes.
happy and healthy. And it's not telling jokes. It's just like somebody's your name is Kimberly, ha 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 ha, and you just laugh just for the sake of laughing. And I could see some of your folks, and it reminds me of this tickle bar concept. So I'll send you some information on it.
Oh, do
It's a
please.
it's an international organization, and I got certified in it years ago, and it's kind of a cool thing, you know. So something to go along with the tickle bar. Where do you see this going 5 years from now?
5 years from now. Well, it's interesting. I was at a conference about a year ago with Rick Steves at Auburn University, and it was called Where Philanthropy Meets Travel. And
Love it.
he gave a story about how he used to, when he started all his books and his TV series, he was trying to get people to look beyond Florida to Europe. And now he spends most of his time, when you get him at a speech, as he did at this conference, about going beyond Europe. And if and he and I spoke for about an hour and a half before I spoke first, and then he did, and we both really felt the world is such a big, wonderful place, and we have so much to learn. And going to countries that are outside of your comfort zone, that while safety is a consideration, we're not recommending to get on a plane to Syria or Darfur or Somalia, or places that have travel advisories, but getting beyond the cultures you already know. I would say don't hesitate. And within 5 years from now, if we are able to add five more cultures and countries and be operating in even more places, that would be a win. Really, for us, it's not about how many volunteers. It's really about, the projects that we're taking on and how many people's lives we're changing. And again, I can't overemphasize how important we think that is, that it starts at home, that there's always something you can build, plant, or fix this week that would make life better for someone else, and in the act of doing so, it makes your life better. People might forget that if they haven't done it in a while, and all it takes is a little bit of that reaching out, that offering of kindness, what it does for you selfishly.
Lastly, does this ever work in reverse? Do you have people from other countries want to come to the United States and be involved in a short-term service project?
So in the countries where we work, one of
Right.
the really interesting things is, a lot of people don't understand what a privilege it is to have a North American-based passport, in terms of the doors it can open for you. And most of the countries where we work, it is not at all easy for people to come to the United States, not just because of money, but because of getting visas and permission to come here. It's always been difficult, not just newly difficult. It's always been difficult. And um, so while we've even had trouble having our own staff coordinators, for decades, have difficulty getting them to get visas to come here. And so we'll end up having Zoom conferences. So as much as I'd like that to happen, it really is a challenge. And it's something that's invisible. I think that a lot of people don't even recognize. I mean, we're bringing the world to a lot of people that don't have the privilege of coming to us.
To recap, Kimberly, Haley-Coleman, if folks want to get more information about global global what's the best bet?
So our website, certainly our social media is a great place just to get inspired on the various places where we travel, because again, you don't even have to go with us. It just gives you an idea of what's great to see there. And we have a phone number, 214-824-4562, but our website, I seem so old-fashioned to say website, but that's where you can park all of the dates and the places, just the easiest. We have all the brochures and things like that. And again, I think YouTube and our podcast, anything globalware, if you Google globalware, even AI globalware, there's information out there. And we love talking to people who say, hey, I'm hesitant. I want to do something. I've never been outside of Latin America. Where should I go? We like having that conversation with people. So anybody who wants to talk through it, that's what we're here for.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World webcast. Also, like to thank my producer, Captain Setti. And someday, if you're ever in North Carolina, or where are you located again?
Dallas, Texas.
So if I'm in Dallas, Texas, maybe we'll bump into each other. That'd be great.
Oh, please, Blaine.
Thanks. I enjoyed this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Blaine.